building the bomb, they had decided to set off the bomb at a non-commissioned officer's dance at Fort Dix. The idea being that there are no innocent in this war of aggression.
What we wanted to do here was deliver the most horrific hit that the United States government had ever suffered on its territory.
All right, there you have it. William Ayers now. Obama on Ayers on Michael Smerconish's show. I assumed he'd been rehabilitated. I didn't know when I went to his house that was Bill Ayers. But the same guy, he sat on the board even 4 years after. Bill Ayers was quoted September 11, 2001, of all days, in the New York Times, saying, "I don't regret setting bombs. I feel we didn't do enough." Now, joining us on our Newsmaker line is John Murtaugh. And his father was a New York State Supreme Court justice. He was presiding over the trial of the so-called Panther 21, members of the Black Panther Party indicted in a plot to bomb New York landmarks and department stores. The day the Pentagon was bombed, former California Congressman Robert K. Dornan, B-1 Bob, actually went to the Pentagon immediately after the bombing. He was there and saw the destruction. Anyway, guys, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. A pleasure and honor to be on with John.
John, why don't I let you tell your story? You were 9 years old at the time, and your house, well, a car by your house was bombed, and then there was a message in blood-red graffiti on your sidewalk: "Free the Panther 21, the Viet Cong have won, kill the pigs."
That's right, Sean. First of all, thank you, Congressman, for those kind words. It wasn't just a car by the house, Sean. They came to our house at about 2 o'clock in the morning. As you said, I was 9. My parents, my sister, my brother, and I were all asleep in our beds. They set off multiple bombs. They set off bombs that they placed right at the front door of the house in an attempt to blow up, obviously, the house, to set it on fire, but clearly also to block anybody's escape through the door. Then they did set other bombs under the gas tank of the family car. You know, in these jaded days, unfortunately, 40 years later, we call it a car bomb. But they were trying to set off the entire gas tank of the car by the back door, again, adjacent to where you would reasonably leave the house. Thank God the first bombs went off in the front of the house, and a neighbor, actually hearing them and coming out, believe it or not, Sean, took snow off the ground and managed to throw it at the car and bury the device and extinguish it before it could blow up the car. Probably saved people's lives that night.
Oh, wait a minute. This is just a guy in the neighborhood. I had no idea he did this, but go ahead.
Well, you know, Sean, my next memory is my mom pulling me out of bed. We're in a burning house. My parents were afraid to leave the house because they didn't know what was outside. They didn't know who was outside. And you know, there had been another incident in New York at or about the same time where a group called a bomb scare into a police precinct. When the policemen left the house, left the precinct, they opened fire on them. So my parents were in a burning house. I can remember seeing the flames through the window, yet they were afraid to flee until they heard neighbors shouting their names and calling for them outside and knew it was safe. For the next year and a half, we couldn't leave the house without New York City police bodyguards. And that was the experience, and it was the Weather Underground that, there's no sugarcoating it, tried to kill my family because of who my father was and what he was doing.
What does it mean to you that Barack Obama, even if you believe his story, and frankly, I don't believe he's honest, that he didn't know about Jeremiah Wright for 20 years. I think he's dishonest. I think he's dishonest when he says he didn't know when he went to Ayers' house in '95 to start his political career. He still sat on the boards even after September 11th when Ayers was quoted in the New York Times saying, "I don't regret setting bombs. I feel we didn't do enough." Now, yesterday, Obama said, well, I thought he'd been rehabilitated. How do you become a rehabilitated, unrepentant terrorist?
Sean, first of all, you're absolutely right. I don't believe the story for a moment myself, and let me make a couple of points. Number one, at the risk of sounding facetious, as an elected city councilman myself, and I know the congressman will agree with me, you don't hold fundraisers in the homes of complete strangers. You don't hold fundraisers in the home of a guy in your neighborhood. You hold fundraisers in the homes of friends and supporters and people you know. So I don't buy that he barely knew the man in 1995.
Well, he was highly politically connected, well known in Chicago circles. So you think it's an outright, like I do. I think Barack Obama is lying to the American people.
He then, at first he was a guy in the neighborhood, then he acknowledged holding the fundraiser in his house. Then when he was pressed later on, he acknowledged that he sat on the board of the Woods Foundation for years and years with the man, tried to downplay the significance of that until the records of the foundation came out, and it was clearly an ongoing and regular working relationship. Yeah. As you point out, the story went from a couple of days ago, I didn't know his history, to now I thought he was rehabilitated. But Sean, you quote the 2001 New York Times article, which is critical. But in 1997, Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn, who incidentally took credit for the bombings in New York, in a letter to the Associated Press at the time. But in 1997, they were interviewed by Connie Chung on national television, and they said they only regret they hadn't been more militant. In August of 2001, Mr. Ayers is profiled in Chicago Magazine.
Stomping on the American flag.
And he's photographed standing on an American flag in an alleyway. And you remember that he never served jail time because he got